right, welcome into the Sports Hub Celtics show. As the Celtics get ready for what I would imagine would be what I would hope would be for them a deep postseason run that will begin tomorrow for Game 1 of the first round series against the Philadelphia 76ers. They go in the East as the 2 seed. A wildly successful season for the Celtics, considering no Jason Tatum for the large portion of it. But it didn't, look, it exceeded my expectations, but not by much. Not by much. We can go back and roll tape. The time it was either the opener or was the game against the Lakers. Maz was out that day, but it was Felger and Maz. It was myself, Felger, and we had Gary Washburn, your colleague at the Boston Globe, on with us. No, it was definitely the opening night against Philadelphia.
Yeah,
because we were talking about.
It's funny, they're opening the playoffs the same way they opened the season against Philadelphia at the Garden.
Yeah, and even Gary, whose coverage I love, and I think might be some of the best in covering the Celtics in this city. Even he was like, yeah, they might be a play-in team. And Mike and myself were like, this is crazy. So I guess you all don't feel all that great about Jaylen Brown and Derek White and some of the guys that are still here. I know that they've lost a lot. And guys like Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis really didn't play all that much in his time here. But fine, you think they're going to be a play-in? I think that's crazy. So I thought maybe a 4 seed, maybe 3. 2? And how they've looked in the season they got out of Jaylen Brown, I mean, wildly successful. But I do think that people were crazy to think that they were kind of going to suck and wanted them to tank at the beginning of the year.
I don't know, Jim. I just don't. I think you just want to duck giving them credit in a gap year.
It's not a gap year. It was crazy to think it was a gap year. It's nothing like that. No, in this, they've been fun to watch. And, I think you and I have talked about that game against Utah at the beginning of November.
Oh, yeah, 11 of 51 from 3, November the 3rd. Yeah. Burned in my memory. To me, that's the line of demarcation.
It is, where I feel like Joe Mazzulla, and he had a wildly successful season coaching up this team and, finally, using young players and learning to trust young players, that I think he got a talking to from upper management saying, listen, we're changing our play style. We're not going to rely on the 3 as much. This needs to stop. And I do. And that is, like you said, the line of demarcation. Their play style did change after that.
No, it's interesting because they are overall, if you look at the numbers, they're down 6 3-point attempts per game from last season. When they
6-3, is that what it is?
Yeah, 6 threes per game. When they shot more threes and made more threes than any team in NBA history, they are down 6 attempts per game.
Good.
So that's looking. They were at 48, now they're at 42. So they're down 1/8 of their attempts. So that is significant, and I think a lot of that has to do with Jaylen Brown. Backing it up and taking the 30,000-foot view here, this is how I feel about this playoff run for the Celtics, and I've come around to your way of thinking. It's get out of the East or bust. And the reason I feel that way is not just the way the East lines up for them now, which is I think the conference is on a platter for them. It's looking at and zooming out the entire legacy of the Jays. You just don't know how many more chances you're going to get. We all hope there's 4, 5, 6 more chances with these guys, but the reality is they're both under contract for 3 more years. Tatum's coming off a major injury. Brown has had the Achilles tendonitis. You never know when that could go. He'll turn 30 in October, which doesn't mean he's going to stink all of a sudden, but that tends to be a line of demarcation for players. They've had a number of chances in the past. They've gone to 2 finals. They've won 1. You can't afford to just sort of say, well, it's all gravy because this is a gap year. It doesn't matter. Yeah, this is a bonus chance to contend for a championship we didn't expect, but they have to seize that opportunity because you don't know how many more you're going to have. And history, if you look at history says you never really see the end coming. It always comes a little bit faster than you think.
Could part of that be that we don't know if the end is going to come faster is because of the season Brown just had and realizes I can do this on my own. I can be the fulcrum point. I can be the one that he would want to force his way out. Could that be part of the equation as well?
It could be. I don't think that's the most immediate threat. But, yeah, I mean, that relationship has changed. What were the comments he had after one of the games? And I think he and Tatum have been extraordinarily complimentary of each other. I think they have a great appreciation for their partnership. It might have been in the Ramona Shelburne story on ESPN, but he basically said something like, and I'm paraphrasing, he learned, I don't have to dim my light for anyone.
Yes, yeah.
Do you remember those comments? And I don't think he's going to go back to dimming his light. And I'll just
should he.
I'll give you these stats, too, because this was in my colleague Julian Benbow, his story about what it's been like, Jaylen Brown, since Tatum came back. And this is from Julian's story in the Globe. In crunch time, the ball is still going to Brown. He led the Celtics in fourth quarter shots, 4.6, and scoring 6 points per game before Tatum's return. Since that, those numbers have gone up. 4.8 shots per game in the fourth quarter, 7.2 fourth quarter points. Jaylen Brown, we've talked about this on this show too. Jaylen Brown is still the closer for this version of the Celtics.
All right, so if they were to get, I think we all agree they're going to beat the 76ers. They should come out of the East. If they were to get tripped up, what are the red flags of this team? Because I'll say,
I got one for you, but go ahead.
For me, there's two. One, do we still know that they can't be pushed around or mentally out toughed? Because that run, when they won the title a few years ago, was pretty easy. Let's be honest. So that's one, but that's not as big as the other one. A lot of these young players, we don't know how the hell they're going to perform in the playoffs. Your Baylor Shireman's, your Hugo Gonzalez's, Jordan Walsh. All right, they might shine in this series when you're playing the 76ers without Joel Embiid, but going gets tough against the Knicks in the second round. Or if you get to the final, these guys are untested. We don't know. There's a big unknown there. That, to me, might be something that trips them up in terms of this postseason run.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I do think some of those guys, particularly Shireman, got a lot of confidence from the game against the Knicks when Jaylen Brown sat out, and it was sort of a playoff type environment. But it's a good point by you, and there's an old NBA adage that role players play better at home, and you get some games. We've seen this throughout the course of Celtics history. Kelly Olynyk against the Wizards.
Yeah.
The Grant Curry game, Grant Williams against the Bucks. It's not a coincidence that those games happened on the parquet. That's normally the way it goes in the playoffs. I would say if they get tripped up, this is something that I found interesting that Taylor Snow of Celtics.com had. And I don't think he was quite framing it this way, but I'm going to frame it this way. In the clutch, I didn't realize this about the Celtics this year. The Celtics went 16-17 in games that included clutch minutes this year. So
can they close?
Yeah, can they close? Can they close? Sometimes they don't always put teams away. And when a team crawls out of the grave, as the Knicks did last year, what hurt them last year when they lost to the Knicks? Blowing those big leads, the Knicks crawling out of the grave, and then it was a game down the stretch, and the Knicks have one of the best closers in the game in Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, and they've had issues with Josh Hart, too, and you saw that last game at the end of the regular season.
You got to give something up. They were giving him those shots. He made them, to his credit. I can live with him making those shots. It's not to go off on a tangent here, but it's not like I can live with that. What I couldn't live with was when they lost to Oklahoma City with the no bigs lineup, and Chet Holmgren just grabbed an obvious offensive rebound, overpowering Sam Hauser, getting fouled, and they lost the game like that. I'm like, no, I can't live with that. But Hart knocking down those threes, I can live with that.
Brian Robb covering the Celtics for MassLive. Expectations for this postseason, should they get out of the East? Is that what you're expecting them to do? And like we were just talking about, what are anything that could potentially trip them up? Red flags, if you will.
One other red flag that comes to mind on top of what you guys mentioned is the backup center situation with Vooch and Garza. Vooch has not. He's only played 3 playoff series in his career. He's kind of integrating in right now. Is he going to be good enough defensively, or either of those guys going to be good enough defensively to handle the likes of Maxey or Brunson in the pick and roll there, or are they going to need to go smaller and look at alternatives? But I'm with Chris. I think his column this week nailed it on the head. This is a golden opportunity for this group for this year in the Eastern Conference. Though, you are the favorite now in the East. You are healthy as you've ever been entering the postseason. I think even Tatum's situation, while he's not 100% back physically, I think the rest of his body is as healthy as it gets right now, probably as healthy as he's been in years. And we've seen that with his rebounding, I think with his passing. And so when you put all those factors together, Thunder, even out West, have looked mortal this year. I think this is a pretty clear opportunity that you might not – you have a potentially special group this year in terms of how the chemistry has been all year long, and we don't know how that goes year to year as we see with a team like the Magic right now and how much of a train wreck they've been in one year when it looked like they're on the rise.
617-779-0985 to talk C's. We will get to your calls, but we usually have a guest around 12:20-ish, and we will be joined by Bobby Manning covering the Celtics for CLNS Media. He'll give us his thoughts on the upcoming Celtics postseason run. Also wanted to announce something as well, so we'll give Bobby the floor to do that. So we'll get to all that coming up next here on the Sports Hub Celtics Show with Gasper and Murray.
The Sports Hub Celtics Show continues after these.
This is going to take. So I did want to plug what he wanted to plug.
Yes.
I tweeted about this
do.
as well. So Bobby's joined us before. Great dude. He is running in honor of his dad, Robert Manning, at the Boston Marathon on Monday. He's running for Beth Israel Lahey Health. GivenGain.com if you would like to donate. And he is just reading the story here that he posted. Hi, I'm Bobby Manning, Celtics NBA reporter, training for my second Boston Marathon. My father, Robert, passed away May 2017 after receiving excellent care for acute myeloid leukemia at Beth Israel in Boston over the course of nearly 1 year. Following spring, I ran the 2018 marathon for BILH. Wanted to do it again to raise money for the organization's continued efforts helping people and families heal like they did with ours. So givengain.com if you would like to donate to Bobby's run on Monday. And we wish him the best
That is tremendous.
with that.
I mean, it's hard enough to run the marathon. I have so much respect for anybody who trains for it and runs, but doing that while covering an NBA team, I don't know where he's finding the time for these training runs.
Yeah, right. So he's going to have to cover game one tomorrow and then, carb up and then run on Monday morning. I will say this, having
for you, Bobby.
Been there before, talked to people that have done it before, I think people are pretty much fired up to run on this about the weather on Monday because it's going to be chilly.
Yeah, 40s.
You'd prefer that rather than the ones where it's
it's when
75,
it's
80 degrees.
I've heard for people who've run that's brutal when it's that hot.
But Bobby's, the man's a grinder, so I have no doubt he'll be there Tuesday night, like after this.
Yes,
24 hours after this marathon. But it's
for
great.
game 2. That's unbelievable.
It is, but great cause for him. It's awesome to see him doing this.
Yeah.
And B-Rub, for just you selfishly, you got to like how this could potentially line up in terms of travel. So Philly, New York, maybe Detroit. Like you don't really got to go all that far, at least in terms of the Eastern Conference playoffs.
It's sneaky nice. I'm not going to lie. I was not disappointed to see Orlando lose to Philly.
Oh, God.
We did not need to do Orlando-Boston Part 2. And yeah, Detroit, I don't know if Chris has ever covered a game out there. They have, so it's Little Caesars Arena. They have apparently the best pizza in the league for like pregame dining and stuff like that.
Oh, so I've never
special.
covered a Pistons game in that arena. I only covered it at the old arena, the Palace of Auburn Hills.
I saw a Red Wings game there about a year or two ago. That arena's awesome. It's state of the art. It's fantastic.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I've
really
never
nice.
covered anything there. No.
Just quickly on this series, would there be any concern for you, Brian, if it went 6? Because I think at best, I'll give Philly a game. Maybe they win one on their floor. Shots aren't dropping for the Celtics, something like that. But I don't think it should go beyond 5 games. And if it does, I think you come out of this maybe with some question marks.
I agree with that. I have them in 5, and especially if Embiid out of the picture / looking like he's not going to be close to himself if he does end up playing later in the series. You just have the advantage everywhere. Like Maxey, can he win you a game by himself? Absolutely. He can go for 40 points against anyone. But the rest of this team, you're looking at Paul George at age 35, like Kelly Oubre. Edgecombe's a fun piece, but he's a rookie. He's as unproven as most of these guys in the Celtics right now. And you look at Philly defensively, the Celtics have size advantages everywhere in the backcourt and on the wing with Brown and Tatum playing like this. So if the Celtics are locked in like they have been the last few months, it's hard for me to see them losing more than a game in this series.
Yeah, I have the Celtics in 5 too, but I think I might be in the minority on this. I'm not going to ding them if it goes 6, based on the fact that I do think the Sixers have some guys other than Maxey who can get hot. We just talked about role player guys who have gotten hot in the past in Celtics playoff history and had these big games. Kelly Olynyk, Grant Williams. I look at a guy like Quentin Grimes. I look at a guy like Kelly Oubre. Even at this point in his career, Paul George is probably sort of a high-end role player. Those are all guys that could get super hot for one game, and maybe you steal an extra game out of the series. And if that were to happen, I'm not going to kill the Celtics for that. I have them in 5 as well, but if somehow it trickles over to 6, I'm not going to panic, and I'm not going to say, oh, now suddenly I think less of the Celtics, unless it's a situation where they're getting out-executed and outmaneuvered sort of at the end of games. If I feel like it's a coaching situation or an end-of-game execution situation or a mental toughness situation, either to do with what you talked about, getting kind of bullied, or getting too enveloped in the referees. Because one thing Philly does pretty well is they get to the free throw line. And if they're getting to the free throw line and the Celtics are not getting to the free throw line, and that becomes a point of distraction in this series, and that's why it goes 6, then I reserve the right to criticize and claw back what I just said.
100%. But in this series, they're just a mediocre team all season long. They're not that good offensively. They're not that good defensively. I think they're 15th in offensive rating, 17th on defense. And so it's like you have Maxey and then no one else who's really above average on the roster right now outside of Paul George when he's been healthy. So you look at how this play. If you want the Celtics to make a deep run, you look at what's been successful for them in the past, you want to have the short first series. You want to be able to rest up, get the 5-6 days off, prepare for the Knicks. And to do that, the Knicks have a tougher draw off the Hawks too, so that could be an advantage for you here if you can take care of business quickly and then rest up for what should be, a battle in round 2.
And Quentin Grimes, Chris, they call him Grimy,
Hey, Grimy.
Your gratuitous
Yes,
Simpsons.
Yes, Simpsons, Frank Grimes.
Crowbar reference for this week.
I love it.
Dawn and Carver first up here for the Sports Hub Celtics show today. Hello, Dawn.
Hi, guys. How you doing?
Good, Don. How are you?
Okay, thanks. Just a softball question, kind of. Just wondering if there's any of these teams that they have ahead of them in the Eastern Division has the wherewithal to defend the Celtics three-point shooters, because that game against the Knicks at the end, even though people were missing for both teams, they did a pretty good job on the three-pointers, and I'm just wondering, I don't think that you have a team that could do it for 7 games. But then again, do you think that there's potential with any of the Eastern Division teams to be able to play the defense to curtail the three-point shooters?
Yeah, Don, like you, and thanks for the call. I left that last Knicks game at Madison Square Garden, and granted, there was no Jaylen Brown that night, feeling, maybe I haven't given the Knicks enough credit, because they're definitely not to the level of the Heat those years where they were bullying the Celtics, but they're not afraid. They get up for them, and for all the chemistry issues and the bitching about Karl Anthony Towns for stretches early in the middle of the season.
Boy, is that the right verb when you're talking about Karl Anthony Towns, huh?
Yeah, it just felt like there was borderline mutiny on that Knicks team at stretches, and it's like, okay, this thing, they had their 1-year run, they got a new coach, like they're not going to be back, but they kind of righted the ship. And in terms of the Celtics, they do get up for those games. They do defend them well in the perimeter. I left it, Chris, feeling like, okay, again, I still expect the Celtics to get through the East. They should beat New York. They themselves should get up for it and look to right the wrongs of last year. But the Knicks aren't going to be pushovers in that series, if it's to happen.
No, but and I agree with you on that. I think that's probably the toughest opponent for the Celtics. But to answer John's question about a team that can take away the threes, the Pistons allowed the lowest three-point percentage in the league this year at 34.5. So that's a team that I think, if you're looking at it and saying the Celtics are going to live and die by the three, which I don't feel like they're built that way this year, but if they were to revert back to past form, if there's a team that could give them a hard time and take that three away and make them try and do it a different way in the East, I would say it's Detroit.
I'm with Chris on that. And the Celtics have, to their credit, to Joe Mazzulla's credit, diversified that offense a lot since that turning point against Utah. You guys have pointed out their three-point attempts are down 15% from last year. Jaylen Brown's free throw attempts are at career highs, and the offensive rebounding, I think, is just another big part of it. They have last year's team, like Drew Holiday, Al Horford. Those are not guys that crash the offensive glass. We have plenty of guys on the roster that are doing that right now for this team, and they're going to get a chance in the playoffs.
Can I ask because B-Rob and I talked about this off the air, and I want to bring it on the air. Can I ask a big picture question about the Celtics?
Sure.
I think Joe Mazzulla is the coach of the year. He obviously has done a great job this year. He has a championship to his name. Do you still, though, have any reservations about him in the playoffs based on the fact that, look, last year, Tom Thibodeau got him? That was part of it. And I think that was also one of the reasons they brought in, correct me if I'm wrong, B-Rob, but, Tibbs was in
training camp
to kind of help explain to the Celtics, the way that the Knicks looked at the Celtics. And then when they lost to the Heat in 2023, I think Spo got him too. So the times that he's lost in the playoffs, he's lost with a better team. Is there any concern about him going into the postseason? Not that he's a liability, because I don't think he's a liability, but is that one area where you could look at a series and say, oh, the other team gets the check mark?
Yeah, absolutely, because of last year's postseason more than anything else. And I will even go one further. The Orlando series, where it was clear that Orlando was doing a hell of a job defending on them at the perimeter, and their whole offensive ethos was, no, this is what we do. We're not going to try to change.
That's right.
And I think that kind of take a chunk out of them. There's still a defiance and stubbornness to Joe Mazzulla that I think resides in the man, and I think that's, it can be one of his attributes, but sometimes it goes too far. So, yeah, that's a concern for me in this postseason.
And the other thing about it, too, is he's such a great coach, but even I think Brad had to adjust to this a little bit in that the regular season, you sort of have this, because you're so smart and you're so prepared, you have this advantage from game to game. But you get in a playoff series, even if you are better, let's say you're 10% better, 10% smarter, 10% more prepared than the opposing team, that dissipates throughout the series when you're playing the same team over and over and over again. That coaching advantage can get narrowed, and sometimes you have to your point, deviate or come up with a new wrinkle or do something different. Yeah, because now it's like, oh, what worked for you in the beginning or what you had that was so insightful, they've figured it out and they've adjusted, and you have to adjust back. I think one of the great things Joe has done this year, and look, I questioned him very frankly in a column earlier this year about whether he was willing to or capable of adjusting, and he proved me wrong throughout the regular season. But when you look at a playoff series, is he willing to make those adjustments, and will he be able to make them in real time? Because to me, that's one of the few ways the Celtics, other than injury or just blatant player underperformance, could end up getting upset short of reaching the finals, is if there's some issue here where we've seen in the past a coach is able to get a little bit of an edge on him and beat him, even though that coach has the lesser talented team. And B-Rob, what was the stat you had in terms of close series, right? Close series that Joe has won as Celtics coach, like a 7-game series.
Yeah, he's only won one of them, and that was a 3-2 comeback against the Sixers in the 2023 Eastern Conference semifinals. And that was a series that Marcus Smart was calling him out after Game 5 or I think Game 6 for not changing the starting lineup until they absolutely needed to, going double big there. So,
and I have the quote from Smart just quickly. I know he's been killed a lot, rightfully so. He needs to make some adjustments, and he did that.
Yeah. So that was, and to his credit, the 2024 finals, there weren't any close series. They cruised. That's he shouldn't be dinged for that.
That's true.
But at the same time, I would imagine the road this year is going to be tougher. The Knicks are legit. The Pistons are legit. The Cavs are legit if they end up being there in the Eastern Finals. So Mazzulla is going to have to make some tough choices, and I think he has more options this year, guys, whether it's backup center choices, whether it's the young wings, Shireman, Jordan Walsh, Ugo, who gets a chance out of that group? Is it none of them? Or are you just shortening the rotation and going to 7 or 8 guys? All these things are going to have to come into play here as the playoffs get deeper. That's
a great point by you, B-Rob, in that he does have more choices to make, I think, than probably in the past, and more buttons to push, which can be good or bad. Obviously, he's pushed all the right buttons during the regular season, but you're absolutely right in terms of the playoff rotation. It's not clearly, fleshed out at this point.
All right, your calls on the Celtics. We'll get to those coming up next. A couple open lines you want to join us as they start up their postseason run tomorrow for Game 1 against the Philadelphia 76ers. 617-779-0985 is the phone number to join us here in the Sports Hub Celtics Show.
You're listening to the 98.5 The Sports Hub Celtics Show.
Hey, it's Felger here for Cambridge.
Generally agree with that. I also think if I'm the Celtics...
Agree with what? That was just a giant word salad.
Well, in that, the Celtics feel like they can beat anybody, but I'd also like to hear from the Celtics, look, they got to get through this first round too, but we want the Knicks. We want to right the wrongs of last year. And I'm sure you might hear some of that if it ends up being in the second round.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Just landscape of it, because now that it's set with the play-in tournament set, so you get Pistons Magic for the 1-8 in the East, Thunder Suns in the West. Do you see any first-round upsets? I mean, that Lakers-Rockets series could be interesting, but Nuggets Timberwolves could be interesting too. But is there any of these other series draw your interest, Chris?
I mean, there's series that draw my interest. You mentioned one right there, which is obviously the T-Wolves and the Nuggets, because I think the Nuggets are I think people are kind of sleeping on the Nuggets. They haven't had great health this year. They haven't had all their pieces, but they got healthy and hot down the stretch, and everybody feels like, oh, it's going to be either the Thunder or the Spurs coming out of the West. I would not sleep on the Nuggets, but that is a tough first-round matchup there. Looking at these other matchups, I'm just looking at them. I don't really see any upsets. I don't. I mean, I guess Lakers Rockets to me could go either way, even without Luka and Austin Reeves. I think that Houston team is kind of underperformed, and I don't know at this point in his career how much of a playoff difference maker Kevin Durant can really be.
You think people might be sleeping a bit on the Cavs, though, in the East?
I do. I would not be surprised at all if the Cavaliers made it to the Eastern Conference Final. I think that's a team that's kind of underachieved. They have a legitimate superstar in Donovan Mitchell. They have size and Evan Mobley, who I thought would take a big leap this year and hasn't, and Jaron Allen. And those guys are not just, big lumbering guys. Like Evan Mobley can get out and defend to Jason Tatum on the perimeter. We've seen that before. Allen's great at protecting the rim. Offensively, they haven't been as good, or defensively, they haven't been as good as they were last year. Now, they bring in James Harden, who has not been successful in the playoffs, which is an understatement. He's quickly climbing the list of most playoff games played without winning a championship, and he's not necessarily a guy you can rely on. That's kind of a big gamble that the Cavaliers have made, but I did like what they did in terms of bringing in a guy like Keon Ellis, and I like Kenny Atkinson as a coach. I like some of their role players. So if they could finally put it all together, that's a team that I think can be dangerous.
And Toronto's a much easier first-round draw for them than the Hawks, I felt like, which happened because the Celtics beat the Orlando on Game 82 there. But I'm with you. Harden, I just like Harden over Garland, too, in the playoffs, period. I think
That's
Garland's
fair.
just such a easy guy to pick on defensively.
Terrible defender.
Harden can at least, stick up for himself in the post a little bit.
Harden can stick his belly out there and
Yeah, get that.
get in the way. Your little belly defense.
Steve in the car on Joe Mazzulla. What's up, Steve?
Hey, so B-Rob, you made a good point, and I could not agree with this more. Joe Mazzulla's coaching with a top-heavy roster scares me more than what they have with this. And I think when you talk about those past teams, right, you had guys on the bench when you were depending on guys like Jaden Springer and O'Shea Brissett, right, which are guys like, fine, decent bit pieces, but didn't play any meaningful minutes in the regular season. And I think the difference with this team is that between Shireman, Pritchard, some of these other guys have played real meaningful minutes in, as big as they can be, regular season games. So when those guys get in the playoffs, I'm not worried about some of those guys coming in where if they were throwing Jaden Springer out there in series past, like in the championship year, I was going, okay, just stand in the corner and maybe make a steal or something, hit a shot. Don't do anything else. Don't do anything else.
100%. And you can even go down the list. Even a guy like Ron Harper Jr. has given them some.
Yes,
Yeah.
he has.
And so that is the big question to me, guys, is how loyal is Joe going to be to guys in the playoffs? I think last year, he stuck with Porzingis for way, way too long in that Knicks series. And so my question for this series going forward, you have a lot more options here if you're Joe. How is he going to, how much is he going to trust Baylor Shireman or a Vucevic?
I think,
in these
I think
matchups?
Vucevic is really the guy. It's how much they haven't really had time to fully integrate him because of the fractured finger, and you already knew he's a little bit of a defensive liability. And the thing about Garza is, even though he's not the greatest, he tries really hard. He gives you a lot of hustle. And Vucevic is a good rebounder too, but Garza's just a pest on the boards. And Garza shot the basketball well this year.
That's a good point.
Dean in Shrewsbury, you're next. What's up, Dean? Dino. Dean in Shrewsbury. I'm going to put you back on
Oh,
hold
we
because
missed
you're
you,
usually
Dean.
one of the better calls. LaCar in Boston. Hello, LaCar.
What's up?
Hey, how you doing? Casper, you kind of stole my theme,
Okay.
but my theme is about the Celtics coming out of the East. Is the fact that New York loves playing the Celtics a lot better at the Boston Garden than they do at Madison Square Garden. That's where I think the toss-up will be if they have to face the Knicks. Other than that, I don't see no major upset in the East. But I do think that the Lakers can upset the Rockets, and Minnesota can upset the Nuggets.
Yeah, that would be, look, if the Timberwolves beat the Nuggets, it is an upset. It's not like a crazy upset, but it is an upset. And it's definitely an upset because I'm telling you, I think the Nuggets have the capability to go all the way to the NBA Finals. The Lakers-Rockets situation, again, I feel like, those are two teams that are kind of, if you don't have Luka and Reeves, those are two teams that are past their prime. By the way, can I just say it's I'm not trying to hate, but, the whole LeBron and Bronny, first father-son to play, in a play.
His son stinks.
Yeah, it's dude, he's on the team because of his, these are not, legitimate milestones. He's kind of on scholarship, and that's not a knock on Bronny. But all these, oh my God, these historical milestones. It's no, this is kind of being forced, and it's annoying.
All right, we are going to be able to get Bobby Manning, so he's going to be joining us coming up next
Nice.
on the Sports Up Celtics show.
This is the Sports Hub Celtics Show.
Big swing in Shamrock at the Celtics factory. Had a one-on-one, had to make us wait, but I understand. You got to take advantage of that when it happens. Bobby Manning covering the Celtics for CLNS Media. Hello, Bobby.
Hey, Jim. Thanks for being patient. Appreciate it.
Oh, all good. Do you mind if we ask who you got? Who you going to be? Who was the exclusive with?
No major splash. Luka Garza, obviously a guy who could impact them in the playoffs. So it wasn't a Tatum Brown, Joe Mazzulla type thing. Nothing that juicy for you.
Still, it's all good.
Yeah,
you got to take those opportunities when they are given to you. So that's with someone like Luka Garza and some of the younger players that don't have this kind of postseason experience. Do you look at that if the Celtics are going to get tripped up? Because I expect them to come out of the East. Might be a lofty expectation, but I believe they should, considering now that Tatum's back, looks the way he does, is playing. Brown's had this MVP caliber season. These younger players are untested. Do you look at that as a potential red flag, if you will, if the Celtics were to get tripped up at some point coming out of the East?
Well, I think there's going to be a good opportunity for them in round one to see if those guys can contribute on this stage at this level. Like Garza, if he's out there at center, is going to get switched on to Maxey. Is that something that, disrupts them? Vucevic, even in that position, is going to be tough. So they got to figure out what they're doing there. But also, among the Walsh Shireman group, those wings that they played, Hugo Gonzalez throughout the year, those guys are going to be out there for some amount of minutes against Philly's top perimeter players. And if it goes the way it did all year, they're going to be disruptive forces out there, and it'll be a nice complement to what their top players who have won championships, won a championship, have done here. But they're probably going to need at least one of those guys to step up in that position. And we haven't seen a ton from Vucevic so far, so it could be Garza at that backup spot if that doesn't go right. You would think they'd go with the veteran first to open the postseason here. And then on the perimeter, one of those guys is going to get the Maxey assignment, and I would assume it'll be Walsh based on what he did against the Sixers during the regular season in that matchup. Maxey shot just 1 for 10 against him. So, and those are going to be the guys to watch in this series, because I think given what the Sixers have and how undermanned they are, you're probably going to like what you see from Brown, Tatum. We'll see with White, who hasn't shot well this season. But I think, the guys who haven't been in this position yet, even Keita, no postseason experience, those are going to be the guys to watch this series.
Ideally, how deep do you feel like the rotation will go for the Celtics, Bobby? Obviously, rotations always get tightened up during the playoffs, but how deep do you think, Joe wants this rotation to be in an ideal world?
Oh, it's a good question. I think they're going to stay deep for this series. I think you'll see Walsh. I think you'll see Shireman. I think you'll see Vucevic to start. And from there, do you have a ninth guy? Probably not initially, but you could mix and match some of those guys if things don't work. It could be Ugo if Walsh struggles. It could be Garza if the Vucevic thing isn't working at all. So I do think there's a chance for those positions to flip-flop throughout the course of the series. But as far as their regular rotation, obviously including Pritchard, right, you could end up being 9 deep into that bench. And we'll see with Hauser, too. That's a guy whose minutes could fluctuate. I would assume he'll continue starting here into the postseason. So, I think, at least for first round, you could see 9 guys in the game one. And obviously, as the postseason progresses, that tends to get a little tighter.
So I'm of the belief, Bobby, that if this thing goes 6, this first-round series with this undermanned 76ers team, we might come out of this with some questions about this Celtics team. Would you agree with that? Or because Chris doesn't. He's like, look, there could be some sloppiness here. It tends to happen. But...
I just feel like the Sixers have the role players, Bobby, where one of those guys like Oubre or Grimes or even Paul George at this point could get hot for like one game and steal one.
Yeah, and I think they were probably the tougher of the Orlando-Philly mix that they could have had there, because I think Magic bounced back last night, but I don't like where they're at, demeanor-wise, and even just how they played compared to expectations this year. So Philly has better individual players across the board. They obviously haven't ruled out an Embiid return in the late stages of the series, so I am assuming they're probably Celtics are going to win in 5, and if it goes to 6, as Chris said, it's not a huge deal to me. It'll be more about how it happens. A few crunch time meltdowns. You'll be asking questions about this team's ability to close games close and late. That was a problem for them in this matchup during the regular season. You think back to opening night especially. Philadelphia can get shots wherever they want from on the floor in those tight games. And it wasn't the Celtics' strong suit this season, those end-of-game clutch situations. So I think if you struggle in that situation, a few big leads like you did in the Knicks series last postseason, there are certain things that could happen in this series that would have you questioning the team's sustainability. But the Sixers just go out and play 2 great games and win those, and you win the series in 6. That alone isn't going to make me panic. It would have to be something about how it happened.
Can you expound upon a little bit what you just said about the clutch play? Because I think that's something where maybe there could be a spotlight on who's getting the shots, whether it's so some of the plays that Joe's drawing up. That's something we talked about earlier in the show before you joined us, and that Joe's obviously done a tremendous job this year. He has a championship to his name, but he's lost some playoff series in the past when he's had the more talented team. And you look at last year, Tibbs kind of got him a little bit. Tibbs had the edge in that series last year.
Yeah, I think things slow down a little bit. Things get tighter. The matchups, you aren't able to get to them as easily in those situations. I think this is such an ISO-heavy team that you don't end up running as many convoluted plays in those situations. They've stuck to how they run offense pretty much throughout the course of the games in terms of just lining things up and getting a shot off. So I think there's got to be a balance for Joe in terms of drawing up plays that have a little bit more movement, have a little bit more complexion to them rather than just lining things up one-on-one and getting up a shot. Because in these situations, and, their numbers weren't great this season. They were plus, 1 in those clutch spots, so 13th in the league. Their offense ranked decently 10th in those situations. So it's not a disaster. It's not something they're bad at necessarily, but it's not their strength as a team. I think when you think of the Celtics the last couple of years, you felt good about them winning by 10, 15, 20 points, not them hitting a big shot at the buzzer, or them grinding out a close game in the final seconds. I think that's been a tough situation for them in the last several teams. And this year you're obviously going to be asking that Tatum Brown thing too, right? Who's going to have the ball in those situations? And we really didn't see many of those play out after Tatum returned. So I think that's another question on top of just the overall mixed results in that situation is who's going to be running the offense? Who's going to be taking the shots in those spots?
All right, here's the real question, and we gave this a plug earlier, givengain.com if you'd like to donate to you running the Boston Marathon in honor of your father. And also to help Beth Israel Leahy Health, givengain.com. You did this in 2018, right? And so what lessons did you learn running that marathon, getting ready for your second on Monday?
I got to eat. I mean, you gotta be reloading things in you because you run out of gas at the end there. And I'll never forget getting over Heartbreak Hill, which in itself wasn't the most grueling thing ever, but you just had nothing left after. And there's still 6 miles to go. And I'm like, how are you going to get through 6 miles with just nothing left in your legs, zero energy? And I had to walk a lot down the stretch. I just didn't have enough gas at the tail end of the thing. So I've been running a little faster in some of my training stuff down the stretch here, but I think I'm going to have to tail back the speed a little bit just so I have some energy left for the final stretch there because I only got up to like 16 miles or so in training, so there's still a long way to go after that. And then once you're over Heartbreak, there's still those 6 miles left. And there's that little dip under the bridge before you get over to Boylston on the finish line. And even that tiny incline right before the final stretch just knocks you out. So yeah, it's a grind. I'm a little nervous, but I'm feeling good physically. So I think I'm going to be able to push through. And the crowd really does help you on the day.
And so again,
awesome.
This is your second. Are you? Because I'm under the impression, having talked to those that have done it before, that the weather for Monday, which looks like 45 chilly, this is actually beneficial for you and the other runners.
Yeah, I'd rather this than hot. I don't think I'd finish if it was 80 or 90, certainly. Yeah, so I'll take this. It's not ideal. I think it's going to be pretty cold when we get started, but as the day goes on, it'll feel good. And you'd rather throw on a jacket or something than have no option in terms of cooling down. Yeah, so I'll take this. It's not raining. The first one was a washout that year. I don't know if you remember that one in 2018. It was just pouring all day. That was brutal. So at least the sky is going to be clear for this thing.
All right, so if you'd like to help out, at Real Bob Manning on Twitter X, again, you can go to the givengain.com, and this is in honor of your father. Robert Manning, and also to help Beth Israel Leahy Health to help out Bobby Manning running in the marathon on Monday. And always appreciate you taking the time, your Celtics coverage, and good luck on Monday, Bobby.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, Bobby, go get him.
All right, headlines here. We'll squeeze in more of your Celtics calls because a bunch of you still hanging as we'll continue on that as we get into the final hour of Gasper Murray here on 98.5 The Sports Hub.
Tatum or Brown.